The People's Platform.
Good evening and welcome to the People's Platform. I'm Niresh Aliyatambi. With elections drawing ever closer, there's a lot of talk and counter-talk about the economy, claims and rival claims. How exactly is Sri Lanka's economy doing? It depends on which side you ask. But tonight we brought someone who will shed some light on the economic situation of the country, and that is no other than economist Dhanusha Pathirana. Welcome, Gihan.
Thanks a lot, Niresh.
So, let's get right down to it. We hear so many things about the economy right now. What should we believe? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? What is the situation?
Well, I think the direction of the economy can be assessed in one statement. What we call the unpopular president, what he recently stated about the elections. He said that we might not be able to hold the elections until the IMF program is complete, if I'm not mistaken. So if the direction of the economy is, if it's getting better and if the people are getting out of the mess that they were thrown into a couple of years back, or which was developing into that situation from decades onwards, if that is the case, we won't see a statement or a belief like that from the incumbent government or the president.
But let's look at the numbers.
Yes.
For about 2 years, we were in recession. The economy was actually shrinking. But then I think in the last quarter of 2023, it did sort of turn around. Nothing fabulous, not like India, which is growing at 6.3% GDP growth per year. We were, I think, somewhere between 1.7, 1.8, somewhere there. But that's not much, but it's at least something. How is it looking now?
Yeah, one thing I think we should look at is where this growth is coming from. So now we had negative growth for consecutive quarters, for about 8 quarters. So this has brought down the total GDP by about 25% in dollar terms, which was around 90 billion. Now it's hovering around 70 billion. So roughly around 25 to 20%.
That's a huge drop.
It's a huge, massive drop. So it is quite natural that when things sort of how should I put it, come out of the absolute decline which it was facing due to many international causes also, I think, which we discussed some time back, where the fuel prices and the prices of coal and gas shot up especially coal and gas shot up 10 times and fuel shot up 150 times, which the prices have come down. So as a result, of course, we see the currency stabilizing and also some of the inflows returning, like foreign remittances, and some sort of belief in the system where that this is not getting worse.
Okay, and also we have tourism remittances coming in during this season.
Absolutely. So which has increased about 100% also. So in total, I think we could expect around $3 billion in tourism receipts. So now those things have sort of caused this nominal growth. But on the other hand, we should also look at what is going on with the price level and what is going on with the state of or conditions of living. Now, as we all know, I think the World Bank recently put out a report about a couple of weeks ago. They were saying that the same things, like the growth has stabilized, but they have highlighted about the poverty situation getting worse.
Right, and the government figure is that 2.4 million households are on the Aswasuma program. Welfare program.
Yes.
So 2.4 million households, and if you generally say 4 people per household.
Yeah.
So that's 9.6 million people, if my maths is correct.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people, because we only have about 20 to 21 million people in this country.
Absolutely. So that's around 40 to 45% of the total population under social security schemes. Of course, these social security schemes are completely incapable of turning things around or restoring people's livelihoods. But it's a good indication that things are getting worse in terms of the lower end of the mass of the population, where we see the stabilizing figures are indicators where system can function. But then while the system is functioning, we see a broad mass of the population's living standards declining. So these things these things are happening hand in hand. One thing we are seeing, there's a stability in the external sector, which we can largely attribute the 2% growth to the stability in the external sector, because some of the inflows have returned, like what you said about the remittances and also tourism returning. One of the key reasons for that is, rather than the policy framework which the government has initiated, was the changes that happened in the international commodity prices, I would say, because if the oil prices remained at $140, $130 a barrel, and the price of coal and gas remain elevated in 10 times greater than what it was the previous year, we won't see this year. We'll be seeing still people right on the streets, what we saw during the Aragale period, blackouts happening for 10-15 hours and so on, queues, fuel queues and so on, would persist. But emphasizing
the global situation has become much better,
much more conducive to external stability, which a country like this would desire. But at the same time, the market system is eating into the livelihoods of the mass of the people. What we see is that because the price levels have sustained at higher levels, and the wages have not increased, not nearly as far as what the prices have gone up. So on top of that, the taxes.
You're talking about inflation.
Yes.
And inflation seems to have been brought under control.
Right.
But that does not mean that the prices are going down.
Absolutely.
It's not deflation.
Yes.
The prices continue to remain high, and a lot of goods remain out of reach
of the general public.
The general population. Yes.
Yes. While we see the currency appreciating, the rupee, what we have seen from as high as 380 rupees per dollar, now it has come below 300 rupees. Now today I saw it's somewhere around 298 to 299. So, but despite that decline, the price level we saw when the currency was at its peak or the lowest level, the same level of prices are sustaining. But when you say inflation has come down, what we should look at is, I think, the price level, the aggregate price level, which has gone up to a level which it cannot increase from that level onwards, because the people's purchasing power has not increased, and also there is a restriction from the side of government expenditure and so on, and also the international prices have come down in these essential commodities. I'm emphasizing on that point because those commodities play a big role in terms of the import expenditure. It accounts for a large share of the imports expenditure. So so our demand for dollars directly depends on the price level of these particular commodities. So it in turn determines the fate of the currency. But then again, then we also need to look at why the currency has appreciated significantly.
Yes, why is that? Well, is it now the opposition, of course, says it's because we are not repaying our debts.
Right.
How large a role does that play?
I mean, that is we can't discount that, of course. But what we have to see is that the delay in repayments or the postponement of foreign debt repayment happened since 2022 April. Now we are like 1.5 years gone past that point, but then we could have expected the currency to appreciate much earlier. But then there are other causes. I'm not discounting the fact that it has some impact. I think mainly the point is people's purchasing power has gone down significantly. Now, especially with the imposition of 18% VAT.
Well,
which has,
you actually see this. If you go to a wayside vegetable stall or a fish stall or any of the supermarkets, you realize how few people, customers there are, and how little they are purchasing. And most supermarkets, if they had 6 or 8 cashier counters, they now have about 2 are manned. So there's clearly a big drop in purchasing.
So, so that has clearly significantly have an impact on the demand for dollars, because when you are purchasing less of imports, not because you are now shifting into domestic goods and then your domestic system is expanding or domestic production is rising, just because your consumer power has been suppressed by a system of taxation which is designed to re-engineer the system in a way that they will be enabled to repay the debt. So all the resources have been mobilized just for this single purpose of repaying not just foreign debt, I should emphasize. It's mostly domestic debt also, because the debt that was issued especially during 2022 and 2023 with interest rates as high as 33%, we still have to finance that, and that takes a huge chunk out of the government revenue. As much as 75% of the revenue is directed at just repaying the interest. So this draconian taxes we see, we have to also ask the question where the money is flowing into, what are they doing with that taxed money, and that is 3/4 of that is going into repaying the domestic debt. And mind you, very recently the government published under the duress of the IMF program on March 31st about the loss of tax revenue due to tax concessions. Now, we have been right throughout raising this issue of declining tax revenue, and that as a result causing government to borrow more, because when your revenue goes down, that leads to more and more borrowings, and that has of course played a major part in creating this debt crisis. So we also thought, okay, tax concessions play a huge role in this issue, but we did not think that it is playing it's such a significant role. Now their numbers show that from 2022 to 2023 fiscal year, that year alone the tax concessions have amounted to rupees 978 billion. Now that is 58% of the total revenue that year.
That's an enormous amount.
That's an enormous amount of money we are talking about. So, I mean, so what they are doing is that now, I remember the incumbent unelected president have been always saying that people have to be more productive, and they have been giving concessions to the public, and that's why the government expenditure has gone up, so government has to borrow. But it's in fact the actual causes seems to be the reverse of that, because the tax concessions have been much larger. Now if we take the social security spending last year, it was less than 200 billion rupees. Now the tax concessions amount to nearly 5 times of that. So who has been getting the concessions? It's the wealthy who have already amassed a huge amount of capital for their own benefit, and they are getting more and more concessions from the government, which has resulted in this collapse. So and not stopping from there, they are putting the blame on the general public for asking for more concessions and so on, which increases government expenditure. But in fact the tax concessions alone, apart from the government expenditure that is going on to debt repayments for domestic bondholders, and the government projects that has gone into feeding the profits of these conglomerates who work hand in hand with the political establishment, the tax concessions have played a major role in bringing this the system down to this level.
So what was expected over the last 2 years, almost 2 years, of this government was that these major issues would be ironed out.
Right.
But it doesn't seem to have happened. We seem to have been, putting band-aids or plasters on major illnesses here.
Absolutely. Now, if we look at the expected tax revenue out of VAT, the marginal tax increase out of the VAT changes is somewhere around 720 billion, the increase. But the loss of tax revenue due to tax concessions during last year was much greater than that. So we see whether this tax, this draconian taxes, which is having a stranglehold on the general public, whether that was absolutely necessary. Of course, that was not the case. This is what the numbers are showing. So we are being taxed to sustain a government that has given concessions that is much greater than even the amount that we have to pay in terms of indirect taxes, and as a result, we have to pay these taxes.
Food for thought, indeed. Right. And we will talk more about it when we come back after this short break.
The People's Platform.
Singharaja, Sri Lanka's precious world heritage.
The People's Platform.
Welcome back to the People's Platform. We are with economist Dhanusha Pathirana. Now, there have been media reports over the last few days that the government has repaid a fairly large amount of debt, something like $2 billion or some figure like that. But critics are saying that the government's debt portfolio has increased by much more than that. So what's going on? What's the point of paying debt but you borrow even more?
I think now the central bank governor, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, mentioned this a few months ago also, that they have repaid around 2 billion in debt for the multilaterals, which is the IMF, World Bank and so on, the debt that they have borrowed from them. So this has been around roughly $1 billion per year since the default was announced in April 2022. They have paid around 2 billion. So we have to look, I think there are a couple of things we have to look at. One, you raised the fact that the debt has been inflating or increasing even further, while we have managed to repay some of the multilateral borrowings. So one thing we have to look at is the purpose of the recent borrowings, what it has actually, what is the purpose, which programs they have supported with this foreign debt while increasing our debt portfolio and further indebting the country. And the other thing is that what was the source of the foreign exchange? Yes, we also talk about the remittances increasing and also foreign tourism returning significantly, if I look at the tourism and remittances. But at the same time, I would also like to highlight, now recently the Exporters Association published a letter signed by all these export lobbies sent to the central bank, demanding the relaxation of the conversion laws, which were brought up in 2021, which are not initiated or which are not imposed during that period. But that is one more reason I would like to bring up as a reason why the currency is appreciating. Now, there was a large public discourse about the illicit outflows and the foreign exchange not coming into the country that was earned by the local population by work and so on. And so what has happened during the last few months was that the central bank has strictly imposed these laws of converting what we call the residual export income, which is you are allowed to keep a certain portion of your earnings as for your import expenditure and for your foreign debt repayment. That portion you don't need to convert. It is the excess of that, say for instance, what you need to pay for your wages, what you need to pay for your, obviously you will have to convert that, and your profits and other expenditures which you would have to bear locally has to be converted into rupees, which comes to around 50% of your total export revenue. It differs from industry to industry, especially garments industry, it's come to around 50%. But now the exporters have demanded to relax these laws and stop imposing these laws on them, and that they have especially highlighted the conversion has significantly contributed towards the appreciation of the currency. So now this could be happening, the strict law enforcement could be happening because the elections are around the corner, so they are neglecting the demands of their own lobbies, which they normally would have a favorable outcome to. But recently this is another vindication of the fact that there is capital that is not coming into the country, which should come into the country in the form of foreign exchange. And so for the past couple of or 1.5 months, the law enforcement has been able to return some get at least the current cash flows into the country. I'm not saying the what was previously kept out of the system are now returning, but at least the foreign exchange that was earned during this quarter has returned some way, or a large share of that has returned. That is why this demand for the conversion laws to be relaxed is coming from the export lobbies.
Now you speak of exporters.
Yeah.
What's the exact situation or the realistic situation where the country's exports are concerned?
Right.
Because it's all very well to borrow more from the IMF, the ADB, and all kinds of other places.
Yeah.
That's just a lifeline.
Yeah.
Or several lifelines.
Yeah.
And of course, it's nice to have the remittances from our people overseas.
Yeah.
And tourism will continue general growth. But we do need exports in industry.
Yes.
And Sri Lanka during the past decades, 80s, 90s, we were an export-driven economy.
Yeah.
The apparel industry, for example.
Yeah.
And of course, our traditional tea, rubber, and so on.
Yeah.
So what's going on with exports? Is it growing now? Is it still the same? Is it shrinking?
Yeah, the latest numbers show there is a slight decline in total export revenue. So despite there is an increase in the inflows from remittances and tourism, there is a decline from the earnings of our production structure. So this is now...
Well, that's a very serious matter.
Absolutely.
Because economic stability would mean that we are moving towards export-oriented growth. But if the export sector is not growing, then there are some underlying issues there.
Yes, I would like to highlight few issues. Now, one is that this implementing of these IMF pro-market policies have or even going beyond that. Now there is a massive tax on energy prices. We know on like petrol and diesel, which raise the transport costs right throughout the system. And then on top of that, we have highest electricity tariffs across probably South Asia or even Asia. So this has raised the production cost. But on the other hand, we have to also highlight the fact that the industries are being subsidized. They are not paying the same rate what the consumers are paying. When the consumers are paying somewhere around 80 to 75 rupees a unit, the industries are paying less than 30 rupees a unit, which is now published in the CEB. You can go and check. So there is also a myth that these industries are suffering because of the electricity price hikes. But then we have to show other things like the energy costs and so on are higher than our competitors. So so these issues, largely due to implementing of these policies, have moved large amount of investments out of the country, which might not return, because once an investment goes out of a system, it is highly unlikely to come back.
Because it's gone to another country.
It's gone to another country, and there's a cost of relocation.
Absolutely, because whichever foreign direct investor it is, hasn't just taken it back home and put it in his pocket.
Yes.
He or she has taken it and set up another factory in another country.
Yes.
Yes.
So moving back is costly.
Yes.
So
my final question to you is what needs to be done to get the export sector back on track?
Yeah, I think we need to learn from both the historical experience of the recently what you call newly industrialized countries in Asia, like especially Japan, countries like Taiwan and South Korea, which the state played a major role in setting up the initial industrial structure, which gave a direction to the private sector or a transformation in the mode of production in a way that would enable a country to develop or transform its economy as a whole. But what we are seeing right now is that we are reliant on these labor-intensive type of garments production, which has run out of its capacity to expand. And then again, the technological or scientific knowledge which these systems can absorb is very minimal. So if we look at the past 40 to 50 years, the transformations we see in this sector is very low compared to other industries like electronics and machine building and so on. There's a massive transformation, and also the wages tends to rise with that, because your labor productivity is rising with absorption of science and technology into the system. So that doesn't happen automatically through a market system. There are various reasons why there are blocks. So you can broadly call a market failure. That is what we are seeing in the third world in general. We don't see markets moving into these type of industries in a short period of time.
So I think we do need to have another program to discuss what you just said, because that's a lot of food for thought.
Sure.
And I'm afraid we are out of time for tonight. My thanks to my guest, well-known economist Dhanusha Pathirana.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for giving your expertise, and we will bring you back again to shed more light on this situation, because you've certainly said a mouthful today. Okay,
Thanks.
so thank you very much for watching. Good night.